Okay, we are live.
Thank you, Julian. Thank you, members, for meeting with us today. This is just our kind of our organizational meeting for this committee. Seems like this committee hasn't met since 2015. Looks like Councillor Gibson sat on that committee at that time. I attached a few documents to the invite. There's of course the agenda, and then a draft of the rules of procedure that were in place in 2012 and that we are still using unless you choose to amend those. And then we also have to take action on an open, on a meeting, notice of meeting resolution that's required for under the Open Meetings Act. The first order of business would be for you all to elect president and vice president of this committee. According to the rules, the chairmanship and the vice chairmanship rotate between the councillors and the administration, and would take nominations from the members for president and vice president.
Ms. Yara?
Yes, Councillor Gibson?
I'd like to nominate Isaac Benton for chair.
Okay. Councillor Benton, do you accept that nomination? Sorry, you're muted, sir.
No, I'm still working. I am using the new computer, Stephanie, so
okay.
You'll be happy to hear that.
Okay, I hope it works.
Yeah, unless there's anyone else who would like to do it, I'd be willing to chair.
Do we have any other nominations? Alrighty, according to the rule. Yes.
Just wondering if that's where we left off in the rotation. Is it last time we had it? Is it the council representative?
Councillor Gibson, do you recall who chaired this the last time it met?
It was Rob Perry. It was the CAO at the time.
Okay.
Yep, that's right.
Okay. Thanks, Chris. All right. Because this is a virtual meeting, I do have to take a roll call vote of the members. So I'll just start based on how I see you on the screen here. So Councillor Gibson, a nomination, a presidentship or chairmanship to Mr. Benton. Yes, for Councillor Gibson. Councillor Benton.
Yes.
Councillor Jones.
Yes.
Ms. Nair.
Yes.
Mr. Davis.
Yes.
Mr. Doran.
Yes.
Thank you. That's unanimous. Now we just need to take nominations for vice president, and I assume that the vice president should be probably from the administration side.
Thank you, Ms. Yara. I'd like to nominate Mike Doran, please.
Okay. Mr. Doran, do you accept the nomination?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Any other nominations for vice chair? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and take a roll call vote for Mr. Doran as vice chair. Councillor Gibson.
Yes.
Councillor Benton.
Yes.
Councillor Jones.
Yes.
Ms. Nair.
Yes.
Mr. Davis.
Yes.
Mr. Doran.
Yes.
Okay, congratulations. We have our chair and vice chair. I'll hand it over to Mr. Benton. Councillor.
All right. Thanks, Stephanie, for getting us launched here. Next on our agenda is procedures for the Guidelines Committee. And those are the ones that Stephanie attached to the invitation. And as was said, at least as far as we know, those procedures are from 2012. So we might have to use that as a framework for now.
Yes, and certainly if you want to take some time to look over these guidelines and make some recommendations later for changes, that's also an option. We can share those on the screen if you need to, just let us know.
Does anybody need to see those shared?
Okay.
Okay. If all right with the committee presently, why don't, if it's all right with them, I would suggest that we use these procedures for now, we'll just refer to them if we need them for now, and we can propose any changes for the next time we meet. If there are no objections to that. All right, then we'll proceed to the resolution.
I think Ms. Nayer's raising her hand.
Oh,
Did you
okay,
have
I'm
a
sorry.
question?
I need a bigger screen.
Is-
Ms. Nair?
Thank you, Chair Benton, and we're using the little raised hand function as you do in the council meetings, if that's okay.
Sure.
I would just ask, has this been through legal review, or can we sort of formally send it so that our city attorney's office can make sure that this comports, especially in light of the revised Public Employees Bargaining Act that just got adopted this year? I want to make sure we're still on track with that.
Good point. Sure, it had some kind of legal review at the time, but I wasn't around, or I wasn't at least on this committee. So that sounds good. So next, I think, is our open meetings resolution. Ms. Yara, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
This is the resolution to determine reasonable notice of meetings for calendar year 2020. And Ms. Yara, could you just walk us through that quickly?
Yeah, I'll take you through this. This is a pretty standard resolution for open meetings. Basically, just that's it says that you will set the schedule today, or as you go through these procedures, it does give some guidelines on when meetings are called. We do have to notice our meetings 10 days in advance. And we do that through the regular means that we use for council meetings. Also, the rules state that telephonic or email notice should be provided to the employee organizations that would be either presenting or being the topic of any subject for this committee. And I have made notice to all the unions. Unfortunately, it didn't tell me how long I needed to notice them. I did provide notice to them on Saturday, just passed. So, and this just is pretty procedural. It just allows you to have open meetings and tell us when to notice.
Okay, is there a motion for the resolution, Open Meetings Act resolution?
I'll move approval for the Open Meetings Act resolution.
And is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Davis.
Mr. Davis made the second.
Okay,
And
any discussion?
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I got a quick question. In section 6, it states the notice requirement shall be met by posting notice, date, time, place, agenda in the lobby of the first floor of the Albuquerque Oaks County Government Center. I know they've been remodeling. Is that where we still post the public notices?
Actually, during the public emergency, Mr. Davis, we haven't been posting because actually the case is not there. They were painting. We have been providing notices on our website and of course in the paper. So those are still in place until we're able to fully be back in this building. We won't be posting those down there. So if we need to change that, we can.
Yeah, and I guess, yeah, that's the question. Do we need to change that or modify that?
In other instances, we've actually added wording after that sentence that says, or on the city council website. I don't know if our Mr. Melendres, would that be sufficient? Or Ms. Holtz, if you have an opinion.
I think, I'm sure Samantha, I mean, I probably come from the same place, but I think you could amend that to make it clear. I apologize about my background, by the way. I was messing with it and I probably look kind of weird, but I'll try to fix that for next. So I think that the resolution is probably okay. I think Mr. Davis brings up a good point. I mean, we know we're in the public health emergency. I mean, it should probably be clear what our intent is during this time. And so I think a simple amendment that the language as it reads, it'll be posted, downstairs. I hope that we can anticipate that at some point that'll happen again. But I think it'd be easy to add an amendment that says that, however, during the pendency of the public health emergency, electronic notice will be posted on the city's website and distributed to the greatest extent possible, or something like that.
All right, I would suggest that if we see, let's continue the discussion. If there are any other amendments, we'll vote on them all at once, but that makes sense to me if everyone else is in agreement. Ms. Holtz?
Yes, Chairman. I would just suggest that you would put the posting, as Chris said, but I think in most of your postings are online, that it should just be not even just in the public health emergency, but just in general posted on the City Council website.
So would you suggest that we add language that said and the City Council website, or remove the language regarding posting downstairs?
I think most of the public gets their information from your website, and it's probably actually easier to access from both the union standpoint and the public.
Okay, so we'll plan on that as one of our amendments. Any other suggestions for amendments to this resolution?
Chair Benton, I just wanted to point out that Section 5 already provides for notice on the city's website, so.
I knew I had updated that somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah.
Sounds like we're covered then. Do we want to amend to remove the language about the 11th floor, the bulletin board or whatever it is? Probably that would be an amendment then still to do that. Ms. Holtz, per Ms. Holt's suggestion, which I agree with, unless anybody disagrees. Any other suggested amendments? Excuse me.
Chair Benton, sorry, trying to use the raise hand function here. So Lawrence just pointed out that the online language is not in Section 6 for emergency meetings. So maybe we could add that there and then make the physical Albuquerque Bernalillo County Government Center optional either during the pandemic or in general.
Okay, got that, Stephanie?
Yeah, so I would just add the same language that appears in Section 5 after Bernalillo County Government Center, semicolon, and also on the city's website to Section 6.
All right, I will move that as an amendment, and we'll have to, I guess, take a vote on that amendment. Is there a second?
Yeah.
Second from Member Davis.
Thank you.
Just give me 1 sec. Alrighty, I will start then. Sorry, I can't alphabetize in my head real quick, so I'll just go with Councillor Gibson. You yes or no on the amendment?
Yes.
Okay. Councillor Benton.
Yes.
Councillor Jones.
Yes.
Ms. Nair.
Yes.
Mr. Davis.
Yes.
And Mr. Doran.
Yes.
Thank you. Amendment passes.
All right, we're back on the resolution as amended. And did we move and second it? I can't remember.
I don't think you did, sir.
Okay, so I'll move the resolution, approval of the resolution as amended.
I'll second.
Second from Councillor Jones. All those in favor, well, good.
Sorry. Yes, Councillor Gibson.
Yes.
Councillor Benton.
Yes.
Councillor Jones.
Yes.
Ms. Nair.
Yes.
Mr. Davis.
Yes.
Mr. Doran.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That passes unanimously.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Yara. And so we're on our last item on the agenda, which is a discussion of the APOA contract. And I'll just give a brief introduction. I did request the meeting on this specific topic. Of course, we can discuss upcoming contracts in the future, but this one is the one that is kind of on everyone's front page right now, if you will. And so I'll just turn it over, I think, to the administration to describe the status on this.
Chairman Benton, if I may, I believe under the ordinance, the LMRO, and the procedural rules, anytime bargaining strategy is discussed, it has to be done in closed session.
So do we need to go into closed session if we're just asking for status, Ms. Holtz?
If you wanted to discuss any sort of details about the bargaining itself, yes, the LMRO also calls for negotiations to be closed, and they are not public. The information is not public.
So if I could, I'll just exercise a prerogative as chair, but I'm open to hearing from anyone on this, including Mr. Melendez's take on it. But the so as elected officials, the three of us who are elected officials on this committee should not participate in any details of any negotiations that have occurred. So my question is really not about the details of any negotiation that may or may not have occurred, but rather where have they occurred? If so, basically general status of anything that's occurred with regard to the renewal or the amendment or the updating of this contract that's occurred, not with regard to specifics, but rather where are we? What is the status as opposed to what are the details? Does that sound, Mr. Melendez and I've spoken about this, does that sound right, Chris, as to what?
Mr. Chair, that's what I understood your question to be, just the general status of what's going on there. However, I mean, if that conversation is going to lead into kind of the territory that Samantha is suggesting, then there's probably no harm in discussing that in executive session, just to keep those protections in place. So I think it's the answer, whether or not we go into executive session is dependent on what the answer needs to include. And so I think that answer coming from the admin and or city legal, I think we should take their advisement on the forum to receive that information.
Okay. So in this case of the world of Zoom, we'll just be going off of the live streaming. Would that be correct? I see Ms. Snyder waving. I can see you, but you're so small there in that little box.
Sorry, yeah, okay. So thank you, Chair Benton. I think because there is great public interest in this topic, Samantha can jump in and tell me no, including in the middle of any sentence, please do. But what might be helpful is just to explain, especially for anybody who's watching this, how the normal cycle of negotiations works in the abstract. And then I can try a couple of sentences about where we are also in general. And then if she hasn't told me to zip it, then we can formally move into closed session. Does that work for everybody?
Does that sound good, Ms. Holtz?
That is fine, thank you.
Okay, thanks for offering that, Ms. Nair, and we'll turn it over to you.
Great, thanks. Thank you, Chair Benton. So, in general, for folks who are not as deeply engaged in sort of the city minutia, our budgetary cycle usually starts in December for the fiscal year budget that will begin then the following July. So in December 2019, internally in the executive branch, we start talking about the FY20 budget that starts on July 1st, 2020. So Then sort of reversing back from that, we try to at least have started most of the union negotiations in time that we can send down a budget that reflects some of those discussions. We've only had to do this once because we were able to negotiate 2-year contracts the last time around. And that time, council had not activated this committee, so things are a little different. But what happened this year was in December, January region of, what year are we in? 2020. So December 2019, January 2020, we began the process of talking about opening and with all of the bargaining units. So again, just for the background of folks watching at home, we have 7 bargaining units, which is what we call the different unions here in the city. There are 5 that are part of AFSCME, and then there are the IAFF, which is the firefighters, and the APOA, which is the Albuquerque Police Officers Association. I believe that we only actually got to open with APOA before COVID hit. And so at that time, we met with all of the unions, and you know, our labor liaison, Vice Chair Doran, did a lot of that work. But we all decided sort of collectively that since the entire budget process was being put on hold, it made sense to put union negotiations on hold. And at the same time, we also made some agreements with the unions about things related to COVID, like leave and that sort of stuff. We didn't have to necessarily do that because it was an emergency situation, but we like to keep that, you know, relationship healthy. And so we formally paused negotiations or closed negotiations until such time as we would know what the heck was going on with our revenue stream. And we have not opened back up with anybody or opened with any of the AFSCME units at this time. Samantha has not said anything or given me a look, so I think I'm good, and I'll stop there.
Okay, so just to reiterate, it sounds as though there were some discussions with APOA prior to the health emergency arising.
Chair Benton, yes, that's correct. My understanding is that any of the terms of those negotiations are still confidential and cannot be individually discussed unless the APOA were to agree with that. And not knowing where this meeting was going, I haven't sought that concurrence. Maybe you have, but again, I'd look to Chris or Sam to tell me if I'm wrong, but that's my understanding.
That's correct.
Councilor Gibson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So my understanding is that you did meet sometime before mid-March or late March, and had a meeting, and then subsequent to that decided just to put things on hold. So was that an actual formal meeting, or was it like maybe a series of less formal, informal conversations, discussions here and there?
Chair Benton and Member Gibson, so first of all, to be correct, Mike just told me that we had also opened with IAFF and we had closed, and that we're currently closed, but just wanted to make sure I was clear about that. There were several discussions. I'm not part of the negotiating team, but my understanding is there were a series of discussions. I don't think of any of it as informal. I think the negotiation process is fairly well structured.
Okay.
So just to follow up, so fairly structured, to me, that puts a picture in my mind of in a meeting room, you know, with people who need to be there, who are invited, and who's on a calendar, things like that, correct?
Can I answer that? Councilor Gibson, yes, you are correct. There are meeting sets. We have meetings that take place usually in the city's ADR section because there are separate conference rooms that the two parties can caucus in, and then a joint room Each negotiation team consists of 4 people who represent both the city and the union involved. And also there's a lead negotiator on each side who moves the ball along and, you know, when there's a caucus, tries to kind of get the parties to move along as well. So it is very formal, and calendar dates are usually set at the beginning.
All right, thank you, Ms. Holtz, for that. I'll just ask the members at this point, do we want to go ahead and go into executive session and talk a little bit more about how far those discussions went? Again, without counselors or, you know, whether any elected official, to be clear, we know we're not supposed to be talking about the details within those negotiations, but rather it might seem that we would want to go into executive session just for the purpose of understanding how far along these were, or you know, what the implications would be now that we're meeting this committee, and to provide guidelines and to provide. I mean, I think the purpose of this committee is, of course, to while keeping that arm's length from the council, individuals on the council, that would provide some forum for the cities, as the name of the committee implies, to provide guidelines to commence negotiations. So I would suggest that we do go into executive session.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Mr. Chair, so in order to go into an executive session, you would need a motion, second, and vote. And so if you want to put that in the form of a motion, it would put it on the table for discussion.
Yeah, I'll move it for the purpose of a discussion. And I saw Ms. Holtz had a comment.
Just also a reminder, in the times of non-COVID, you would also take a roll call vote, even in person.
Correct. Is there a second for that motion?
I second that.
Any further discussion?
If I may, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'm not sure what benefit is to ask how far along it is. I'm not sure if that's something, since it's not been negotiated for a while or haven't been actively meeting, that even stands. So I'm not sure whether I'm comfortable with this or not. Ms. Holtz, can you tell me whether I should be comfortable with this?
I believe you can enter into the closed session for strategy purposes. And I believe there could be questions about strategy. I think the rules also talk about what your parameters are for decision making. I have to pull those up here. There was a list on the rules of procedure. So the bargaining strategy can include monetary items, salary benefits, the length and period of the contract, and overall compensation guidelines. So those would be items to go into executive session to discuss those strategies. Also keeping in mind that the mayor under the ordinance is the one who has the designation to get the teams together, to organize that, to actually bargain. And so guidelines are not set policy, but are administrative in nature. So those would be the items you would want to go into closed session about.
Mr. Chair, if I may, Ms. Holtz, that list, I believe it's an including but not limited to list. And so are we interpreting those as being the express limitations, or do you think that there's some wiggle room given that included but not limited to language?
There is some wiggle room. They are more like guidance to give you guys examples. You're asking, I think, the counselor's asking if she should be comfortable or not. And I think, if you're definitely falling within those parameters, if you believe that knowing the status of where we're at would help with strategy on those particular issues, I believe that that would be fine to go into closed session and would be appropriate.
Thank you.
And I see a hand raised in the conference room.
Thank you, Chair Benton. I just wanted to be clear that as an administration, of course, we want to be as open and transparent with both the council and the public as we can with respect to this or any other issue. But I also just want to remind folks that although some people don't consider the police union to be your everyday union, these are in fact labor laws that have been hard fought for 100-some years by the entire labor movement, and we don't want to do anything to jeopardize those or certainly to draw litigation when it comes to any of our labor negotiations. So for those watching at home and wondering why we're spending so much time trying to get this right or whether we're trying to hide anything, I just want to give that assurance that this is really about adhering to the law and to the principles of bargaining in good faith that affect all of our bargaining units. Thank you.
So these four categories in which we would go into closed session are all monetary guidelines and length of contract. There are other components of the contract, some of which, of course, have been discussed publicly and in the media with regard to things like bidding, with regard to some of these time periods for discipline and so forth. Are those within this committee, and these are, I realize these are employee protections and specifics, but in more general terms, are these off limits to this committee?
I think the intention of the committee, Councilor Benton, is to make sure that everybody's on the same page within the administration and within the council to inform the council of what is happening. I do believe under the ordinance, however, the mayor is the one who holds that designation to do the bidding, and the negotiation teams may or may not come up with something a little bit different, but would be informed of the recommendations of this group. Due to the fact that, the unions may propose something different that may be workable.
All right, well, we do have a motion and a second to go into executive session. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, Ms. Yara?
I'll go ahead and take a roll call vote. Counselor Gibson,
Yes.
Counselor Benton,
Yes.
Counselor Jones,
Yes.
Ms. Nair,
Yes.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Doran.
Yes.
All right, that passes. And I would ask if Mr. Moya could request that our stream be cut off while we are on executive session. And that'll take a little while, I believe.
Yes, just give me one moment to make sure we're off. Thank you.